Welcome everybody to State of the Industry, brand new channel that we got going on here on YouTube. And you heard him before, and people kept demanding. The phantom fans that we have kept asking, "Yo, where's that Marvin guy at? He's kind of cool. We kind of like that guy." So we decided, you know what, we're going to answer the demands, and we're going to say, you know what, we're going to bring this guy back, and we're going to ask him some hard-pressing questions like, why did he get into VFX in the first place? What is it about the industry that he said, you know what, I think I want to try that out as a career? Yeah, man. So give us a little story of like your background, bro.
Hey everyone. Yeah, so pretty much, growing up, I was always interested in movies, TV. It's entertainment for all. And started seeing movies with the special effects and really caught my attention because I'm like, oh, cool. Like, how did they do that? Are those actual locations? Do these things exist? And started kind of seeing clips of behind the scenes, certain movies. It like blew my mind. Well, I mean, obviously there were some that were pretty obvious that, it was fake, and then others that the VFX was just really well done. And I think, for a lot of us, the movie The Matrix was a really big milestone in visual effects, and that really caught a lot of people's attentions, a lot more with what they were doing and how creative they were doing the VFX within that movie. And there's a lot of other movies that kind of helped out with the interest. Jurassic Park was one that I thought was amazing because I'm a big fan of dinosaurs. Seeing the dinosaurs on the big screen and how well they incorporated the CG with animatronics and stuff like that. It was just a overall very fun, enjoyable movie. So I started kind of looking into what I could do after high school. Nothing really caught my interest. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I always kind of went back to I love watching movies, watching the behind the scenes, the visual effects, like just making that simple beginning recording of something and adding all of these elements to it and creating the final product that just completely different. And I was looking into, schools and found one that I went to, ended up going to Full Sail. I liked their courses. It kind of seemed like they went to most of the process, going into like 2D animation, 3D stuff, environments, things like that, where I ended up choosing to focus on compositing. I really enjoyed putting everything together and finalizing everything and just seeing the amount of work that ends up being broadcast or shown in the theaters, that sort of thing. In a nutshell, that's pretty much what really got me interested in it.
Yeah, so I know the first studio that we met, a lot of people from Full Sail went to that studio. It was a giant studio that did stereo conversion. And I don't know if was that your first gig in the industry, or did you do some internships before?
Yeah, I did a short internship at the studio that was doing 3D conversion.
Hmm.
And while I was there, a buddy of mine at Full Sail contacted me and they were looking for people. And he asked if I was interested in joining. I would have to move to LA. I was in Florida at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been like the first actual paid gig. So I said, of course, yeah, I'm down. So that's how I ended up moving out to LA.
Oh, nice, man. And then we were at that big studio for a number of years. And you got to move up through that studio. I know you started as an artist, then you moved up to be a lead. And then you actually got to work overseas for a little bit working for that studio, right?
Yeah, that studio, that was a wild ride, and I think a lot of people would probably say the same thing. A lot of great people, a lot of great artists to work with. But yeah, I was doing a lot of the roto work and eventually went into the lead and kind of helped out overlooking the teams that we had and discussing with other departments of what they need and what's needed and expected. And eventually, when we were getting a whole bunch of projects, they needed a lot of roto. If anyone knows about conversion and roto and things like that, it's a lot of roto needed. So they ended up looking obviously to better use of artists and the budget. They looked overseas over in India and they're looking at studios out there that could help with a lot of the roto needs that were required. There's a couple of us that rotate. We would be out there a couple months, come back, rotate, and we pretty much were just trying to get the place up to speed and to better assist us go through the pipeline, the process that we use for the roto work while continuing communicating with the other departments and what's needed, what's coming up, all of that stuff. But they ramped up quite a bit out there compared to what we had in Burbank.
Yeah, man, I heard it was like a massive studio. At one point, they had rotating shifts of artists to kind of cover the workload, which we eventually also did at our location, like you mentioned in Burbank.
Mm.
It was wild. And then at one point, the studio moved, and we had to make a choice, right? Do we stay with this company, or do we decide, you know what, we're going to part ways and do our own thing? And from that point, both you and I became basically freelance independent contractors looking for work. And it's funny, I think we became more tight after the studio
Uh,
because we had to rely on each other to help each other out. So both you and I, as we found work, we'd be like, hey, I found this gig, they're ramping up, you want to come on? And other times we would just kind of be looking for our own work, and then we happen to still work with each other at a few other locations. So
right.
that's how it goes. That's why when you mentioned that first thing of, well, yeah, I was interning somewhere and then someone reached out to me and that was a connect that helped bring you into another studio. That's a lot of how we find our work and get gigs. That also came up in our Melisa interview. She said the same thing, where her conclusion at the end of it was she's looking for someone else to reach out to her to get her more work. That's what she's depending on now because as we were kind of talking off air, yeah, there's a lot of ads going out there, a lot of job posts claiming that they're hiring, but in reality, it's either just an old auto update job posting. It's not even like a new job post. It's just something that the system just kicks out and just says, hey, we're looking, but they're actually not looking, well, you know.
Yeah.
So the next thing we're going to get into is um, how the last couple of years impacted us because we were kind of eating good for a little bit, right? We were able to work at different places. It was pretty nomadic working from studio to studio, but we were kind of digging it. You know, we got to charge higher rates. We got to have more downtime, something that people claimed a lot these days to want to have, which is like that work-life balance, where we weren't stuck working crazy hours all the time. It was kind of on and off.
Right.
So we had sometimes unintentional mini vacations, you know. We prefer to work consistently, but sometimes we have some downtime. But because working as an independent contractor, you charge higher rates. And as a result, we can afford to have downtime. We can afford to subscribe and unsubscribe to subscriptions for software we were using. It was way more flexible. But then the pandemic happened and things changed as a result of that, right? We started to transition into remote work. Yeah, so I just want to see if you can, what are your thoughts on what that was like a few years ago?
It's definitely been a roller coaster. I mean, when I got into freelancing, there was less work. I think because at that time I was mostly doing roto and I did do some stereo work while I was at that company. But after that, I noticed that a lot of junior positions were not really in the US, right? I saw a lot
Mm,
in Canada. And then eventually over the years, I haven't really seen a lot of junior positions over the past few years, really. Not that I've noticed that are out there for anyone who's trying to enter. So the transition for me to get into, say, more compositing took a bit longer, had more time trying to look for a job than I wanted to. But, eventually I got there doing more roto, more roto paint into compositing. Eventually more work started coming in. So it was a little bit easier at that point to kind of do more freelance work. I think for a lot of artists, they would love to get a staff position at a studio, but then you kind of realize as a freelancer how things work in these kind of studios where a lot of them have their core staff and either pilot season hit or they get amount of work or they're falling behind, then they start doing mass hires. And that's where a lot of freelancers kind of come in and help pick up the work. It's funny because, a lot of studios, it's almost mandatory for them to say, oh, yeah, there's a possibility that you can stay longer or a possibility that you staff, just depends, right? After a while, you kind of realize that that's just something they say.
mm,
It was really not something you can really hold on to that long. So, you kind of just go through it and things were good. Like you said, we kept in touch. There was something that freelance gig that needed more people. We would hit each other up. And yeah, then the pandemic hit, everything reached to a halt and everyone was just worried of what was going on.
mm,
And again, there's like a lot of people that were hopeful that things were going to end sooner than they actually did.
mm,
After every month, people were like, oh, this isn't looking good. Kind of start reading up on what studios were thinking or trying to do. People were hurting. Everyone was just anxiously waiting to see what was going on or what would happen.
mm,
And eventually, yeah, the bottleneck kind of happened, right? Where things started opening up. The studios were able to start production with precautions with wearing masks and getting tested for like the whole COVID and everything. And things were working pretty well, it seemed like, because now there was an abundance amount of work that was out there. And I think a lot of us know how it goes, where if you're at a studio, just get hit up by these studios, these companies are like, hey, are you available? Hey, are you available? And you probably get hit up mostly when you are already working than when you're actually looking for work,
Yeah.
which is so funny and frustrating at the same time. I remember a couple times you're like, oh, this person or this place, they hit me up, but I'm working. And I'm like, yeah, I'm at this place. I can't do it. And now it's just like, oh, cool. Like things are going great with remote work. As you said, there was less time in traffic, more time doing what you wanted to do before or after work.
Hmm.
It was a good balance. It was also, I think, parents with their kids, more time and more flexibility on what they had to do. And that was great. That was good for, I'd say, like up until last year when the whole strike thing happened. With strikes, you just never know, right? It could go well or it can go how it went, where the negotiations happening, no one's budging. Again, as hopeful as a lot of people wanted it to be, it ended up not being as quickly resolved as everyone wanted.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of like the downfall, I think, where everyone was just like, here we go again, Yeah, I think at this point, everyone is almost a year, or for some people, it's been a year already, I think. So yeah, it's definitely tough out there.
No, it's been really tough. There was this bubble, right? Where, like you said, it was slow during the beginning of the pandemic, but then studios figured out how to make this work. And then streaming was taken off. So there were all these shows that were being made because everyone wanted to compete with Netflix. So you had Apple Plus blowing up more than it really was. Amazon started to make some interesting shows. Then you had Paramount Plus. There's too many to list. So I'm just going to end it there. Just know there's like a dozen different streaming platforms right now, and we were working for all of them. There's like one project was for this, and it was for that,
Mm.
and that was amazing. There was so much work to go around, but then the bubble popped. Restrictions were lifted. People started to go back outside, live their lives again, and then also studios were realizing that they weren't really making money on streaming. So there was this two things happening: is people were just unsubscribing and people were tuning out. And as a result, they were losing all this money. So then they decided, you know what, we're going to cut back on all this stuff. And then the strikes also happened last year. So it was like this 1-2 punch of we want to cut back on the work already. And, oh, we got to put a stop to all this work because people are striking. And then this year, we're just kind of wondering what's going on. The strikes ended, but why can't we still find work? Why were people struggling? How come thousands are in this very tough spot? And, well, there's a potential other strike that could happen if they don't resolve negotiations on July 21st. So that's part of the reason why we're doing these interviews, is we want people to be able to give their testimonies and express to the major studios out there, hey, there's like thousands of us right now who would love to go back to work. How soon is that actually going to happen? Or are they thinning the herd and hoping that a lot of us leave, which we're not that happy about? So I just wanted to give a space for you to kind of express where you're current and what are your thoughts of what you think might happen in the near future.
Yeah, that's tough to say. I mean, right now I'm in the same place where a lot of people are applying where you can on LinkedIn more time than someone should, because you start seeing all of these posts of people worried and anxious. Doesn't help anyone constantly reading those because you're like, oh, you're kind of in the same place, right? You're like, hey, I understand. But, not seeing too much traction with job openings, yeah, it's a little worrisome. I mean, the stuff that I have seen
Mm-hmm.
um mostly is outside of the US. And even if they're like, hey, it's remote work, but you got to be in the same area, right? The same location. Cool, that doesn't help me. But at the same time, you have hundreds of, not thousands of artists in the same place where if even if that was possible to remote to like a different country, now you have to hope that someone even sees your resume on top of the hundreds of thousands that they probably get. So right now it's whether something changes by the end of July, who knows? The negotiations so far, from what I know, are going well. So I can only hope that it continues that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then beyond that, I have seen a lot of artists either switching careers or thinking about switching careers, as we mentioned earlier. Where do you go from VFX? when you've been doing this for 10 plus years, others longer. This is what I went to school for. I have no training anywhere else. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another thing that people are also struggling with. What other career can you do that won't feel like the competition is as bad or the work is getting replaced or something? That's $1 million question, right? What can people do?
Mm-hmm.
As for the future, I mean, I don't know. AI is a thing right now that people are discussing, how much studios will use, if it'll be good enough to use. There's a lot of potential with AI. And I know that even like, say, things with Roto, the automated Roto that some software can do, it's like, well, how great is it actually? Even say After Effects Roto Paint. Some people love it, some people hate it. I don't care for it too much, but also I think that's one of those things where it fits for different media. So I think with content creators like TikTok, Instagram, and things like that, where you just want the effect and not really
Mm.
worry too much about the quality. And we'll look at it in their phones and tablets and stuff. So you can't really tell, like, especially if it goes by quick,
Mm-hmm.
in that sort of place, I think it works out. And you have content creators or whoever they use to help them out with these videos to be creative and be artistic with what they do. But when you transfer that or you translate that to theater, like theatrical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that won't work. It needs a long ways to go before that works out well. But I think the pushback that artists can have with AI and how it's used, I think is going to be up in the air right now. If studios can find a way to use AI to lower costs, I don't imagine them preventing them from doing it, right? Like they would want to save money. If they can use less artists, I think they will. And I think we just have to find a way to maybe prevent that from happening, maybe blocking them from doing it, which was a part of the whole strike as well with the writers and actors and things like that. But since the VFX doesn't have a union,
Mm-hmm.
what can we do really right now? That's the tough part about it. So I don't know what your ideas are on that.
Yeah, it's a constantly developing situation. I mean, I know that's one of the key cornerstone talking points that's constantly being pushed back is the AI conversation and these negotiations. I think it was pushed back to end of May when they were going to readdress the issue and figure out how to handle AI. Because luckily, if you work on set, if you're building a background, I think you're fine. If you're a lighter, a gaffer, a cameraman, all that stuff, if you're an on-set production person, I don't see why AI would disrupt any of those jobs. But for us, because a lot of studios unionize, visual effects and animation studios start to unionize last year and beginning of this year is because they knew they were going to join Yahtzee and they were going to be at the table to discuss negotiations. That was a big thing that happened is because of the pandemic and working remotely, a lot of people were not working overtime. A lot of people were not working weekends. People were working reduced hours because they wanted to spend time with their families and there was no way for you to force someone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't chain them to their desk and say keep working. Or something that some studios did for us is like we're gonna offer masseuses, we're gonna order in lunch, we're gonna make sure you do not leave your chair, and we're gonna accommodate so that they did everything but attach a catheter to us. That's too far. HR would have a field day with that. But everything else, they wanted us to keep us pushing and working as hard as we could. Yeah, and it's just so odd to be in a place now where so many of us are out of work and it's like the big studios aren't sweating that. I think that's a bit concerning to see. They're not going out of their way to encourage us and tell us that work's going to come back. A lot of them are being quiet, a lot of them being coy, and
Mm-hmm.
it does kind of make you wonder like what is going to happen after these negotiations are done. We just don't know. There's too little communication going on. And then we just hear a lot of like studio heads, like the head of DreamWorks saying, we want to eliminate as many jobs as possible. And then you had something like Godzilla Year Zero that did really well. It won an award for Best Visual Effects. And they kept bragging the fact that they had a small team of less than 20 people do visual effects for that entire film. But
We don't know the hours either, so
yeah,
don't
oh,
know on the
dude, they had
clock.
cots under their desks, man. Japan is insane. We work
Yeah.
with someone who came from a Japanese visual effects studio, and he said, "Oh, I'm not going back." I asked him, like, how you like working here versus Japan? Because we were working a lot of hours. We would work 14, 16 hours. We would work weeks straight without day off. And he said, "Oh, I prefer much better here." We're like, really? Because everyone's tired. We all look like zombies. uh, we all were just pushing to get through things. And he said, nah, Japan work culture, nothing compares to that. And we thought, wow, okay. And he was going to do whatever he could to get another work visa to stay out here. He refused to go back because he enjoyed what he did. He got to work with a lot of amazing directors and meet them firsthand and knows them on a first name basis. So that experience is amazing. Like the kind of experiences we had in general working in the industry is something that we wouldn't trade. As crazy as it was, we got long-term friendships. You kind of build a bond with people going through the thick of it that other people just don't understand. And we appreciate that. Like I said, Marvin and I aren't that tight, but we got each other's back in a lot of different ways. So that just people wouldn't get unless you've been working, side by side working with one another for a long time. It's just a different type of connection you have to people. And that's something that people don't want to lose. And I know a lot of individuals out there may be wondering, why don't you just get on the job? Or there's just so much of investment going into it. We love and value what we do. The level of artistry involved, I kind of question sometimes, depending on what job position you end up getting. It's not that creative or artistic, but it's a job of passion. And that's something that people lose sight of, is a lot of people out there just do a job just to get paid. And I know a lot of the younger generation, that's changing. Very few people want to have a dead-end job where it sucks. It's like a soul-sucking experience to go to. For us, it was difficult, it was challenging, but it had its own reward. When we go to the premiere to see the film on the big screen, if we hear about good reviews, we're proud to say we did something and we contributed to the massive success, even though none of us get any royalties. Oh, the thank you pizzas, bro. That giant pizza the size of 2 tables that had no flavor. That was insane. You get a pizza that huge, that sucked. But
Oh, you're missing out on all the pizza rewards, the thank you pizza. Yeah.
shout out to the mom and pops out there. But yeah, I don't know what the future holds. I think that's why we're trying to reconnect and reach out. That's one of the functions of this podcast moving forward, is to kind of reconnect and give voice to to us visual effects artists who contribute a lot. That's why this whole segment is going to be called Voices of the Industry, where we're going to be talking to a lot of people about their experiences, because I think a lot of us see the credits at the end of a film and think, wow, that's a lot of people. I don't care. I need to leave. That's kind of boring, just seeing an endless scroll of names. But that's not everybody. That's maybe less than half of the people who actually worked on it. Screen time, that's money. So you're not going to pay to say everyone who worked on a film. You're going to give a shout out to the people that they feel were the most important in contributing to the film. So we get overlooked a lot as visual effects artists, but we're proud of what we do. So it's not about the glory and the recognition. It's about, everyone loves watching movies and TV shows. Like, we were awestruck as children, and we want to impart that on future generations to continue to be awestruck by films like Marvin mentioned, like The Matrix, like Jurassic Park. And who knows, man, maybe we'll go back and do like a breakdown of our favorite scenes of how they did stuff, and just hear us geek out, get super hype about these older films that still look incredible today. And because so much passion and drive went into those things, to say we want to make the best thing possible, and we want to get back to that. We want to continue to do that, and hopefully we do. Hopefully not only a few of us come back, hopefully a lot of us get to come back and keep doing this type of thing. So that's our hope, that's our goal. And as dark and dreary and difficult as it may feel, Marvin and I, we got each other's backs, and we all know other people out there want other people to get back to work and to support their families, and support their dreams. We live in America, right? That should be a main staple, is that people should do what they want to do. And as long as it's not like really dumb, they should have the opportunity to make money and to achieve success in a variety of ways. And hopefully we get the opportunity again. Yeah, so I think we're going to end on that note. Yeah, thanks, Marvin, for doing the interview with us. I know we did an interview before, but we wanted to do something that was more in-depth. Yeah, dude, do you have any other closing thoughts?
Not really. I mean, just hoping for the best. Sure. Hope to see a lot of the artists that I worked with at another studio when things hopefully pick up soon. Other than that, that's pretty much it.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to catch us with the next one. And yes, Marvin should be coming back for future segments. If not, we're going to petition that this man continue to work with us, because we enjoy having him on here, and I hope you guys do as well. And all right, guys, take care.